Well, hello everybody again, and welcome to another episode of the Weirdly Magical podcast. And this is the Scorpio Full Moon edition. The full moon will be on May the 18th at 10:11 p.m. London time, Universal Time, or British Standard Time, whichever. And I am Louise Eddington, or Lou. I'm an astrologer, shamanic practitioner, and writer of the book Modern Astrology, Harness the Stars to Find Your Soul's True Purpose. So I offer soul astrology readings, I occasionally offer classes, and I also have an online community membership where I have different levels of membership. All can be found at louiseeddington.com with one D. And I help you to live in deep self-awareness and acceptance. Jen.
Well, hello, I'm Jen. I'm an Akashic healer, reader, illuminator, numerologist, teacher, and creator of the Illuminating Journey Cards. And I offer healing, clearing, Akashic, and numeric readings, workshops, and I have an online group called the Soul Pillow Salon, which is a monthly membership, and all can be found at jenduchenne.com or by contacting me. And I offer a creative way of looking at your life in a new way, so you can start fresh.
So as I said, today we're looking at the full moon. The full moon, a full moon is an opposition between the moon and the sun. So the moon will be at 27 degrees and 38 minutes of Scorpio, and the sun will be at 27 degrees and 38 minutes of Taurus. So we're going to talk about that and all the aspects to that. But before we dive in, just a quick bit of housekeeping, then Jen's going to pull a card for us. If you enjoy the podcast, please subscribe at your favorite podcast provider. And also, please take the time to go to iTunes and leave us a review. The more reviews we get and the more 5-star, hopefully, ratings we get, the more the podcast gets seen, basically. And we also have a Patreon now. For just $3 a month, you can support our podcast, and we'll be introducing special patron-only content moving forward. And that's patreon.com/weirdly magical. Lastly, each episode we're going to feature a listener question. Questions need to be emailed to weirдлymagicalpodcast@gmail.com, and one question will be chosen at random. No personal details will be shared on the podcast other than your first name. So send us your questions. We're getting a lot of listeners on the podcast, not many questions yet. So we really want to answer your questions. So send them our way. But for now, Jen, you have a card for us, yeah?
Yes, I do. So I pulled from the Illuminating Journey deck that I created, and it has soul portals. And so the one that came up this time is number 20, soul portal number 20. So for those of you who can't see, it's a figure kind of in a sort of bubble in a way, in the snow, looking at water, at these dolphins with these crowns. And in the background, there's snow and kind of an angel. I don't know if you can see that. But it's this person is contemplating a bridge, cracking ice, all kinds of water. So air and the different aspects of water and ether. So I find it quite fascinating that this is the card that's come up today for this full moon that is in Scorpio. So we know it's about deep emotional connections or changes. And so this card is all about water, which is emotion. And it's this figure looking at these dolphins. There's two dolphins. One is handing the figure, kind of showing the figure, here's a crown. And what's interesting about that to me is what I read into it is that it's kind of you've arrived at a certain place, maybe a place that you've been longing to be at, and now you're receiving recognition for having kind of traveled all this way. It's like this figure's traveled over this vast plain and is in her own bubble and going, I've arrived. So feels very powerful to me. I don't know if you have anything to say about it, Lou.
It just struck me about all the there's so much water in it, really, and you know, obviously Scorpio is a water sign, the deepest of water signs. So I always love how these things show up, and the dolphin and you know, there's a lot of challenge in this full moon, and this card is showing me the kind of way we can leap up above it, because there's the curve of the bridge, there's the curve of the dolphin, there's the angel kind of floating up above it. I kind of hope that we're going to help you to float up above a lot of the challenges with this, and that's what I kind of see in the card, to be honest. So yeah.
I think that's well said. This idea of being able to see this frontier, kind of, it's very pales, whites and blues in the frontier, is not to see it as a challenge, but to see it as water changing, you know, ice melting into liquid, kind of an opportunity to rebalance this way we've been.
Yeah. Oh, and apparently we do have a question we will be answering. I've realized I've forgotten to look at the emails because they don't get forwarded to me. So we'll be looking at a question towards the end of the thing. So I'm going to get back into that email account while Jen starts to look at the chart, if that's all right with you, Jen.
Oh, yes. All right. That'll be good. So one of us can do that, and then I'll talk a little bit about what I see in the chart, which is, well, I'm going to talk about it a little bit from the numbers, because I think that's a great way to kind of go into it for me. The idea that this is happening on the 18th of this month, and 1 and 8 is 9. So we know it's a 9-day. And the interesting thing is, when we have a 9, that when we add it to any number, it reduces back that number to itself, right? So this month, we're in a 17 universal month, and this is all about creating a legacy. And it's about completing, like, as we're laying the seeds for new things or new ideas, we're kind of bringing in what we value, what we're being called to do. And the 18 is talking about the other aspect of this, which is the completion, the ending of things. And I see the number 18 as kind of it's the ego kind of losing its power, which, when I'm talking about the ego, the personality of self. So of course we want our personalities, but we don't want our personalities to rule our lives or our thinking or our responses. So with the 18, we're having that 9, which is about completion and about compassion, kindness, connection to the universe. And then we also have a 9 because the moon and sun are 27 degrees, which is pretty amazing, right? Like, you just can't make this stuff up. It's so crazy that we have 27 degrees, which is the final 9 in the numbers, because 3 9s are 27. And of course, 2 plus 7 is 9. This is a very magical number. It's quite, it's fortuitous, let's put it this way, if we're willing to take what we're being given to do things in a different way. And so it invites us not only to use our wisdom, but it also invites us to do that, being in balance with ourselves, setting our boundaries, as well as connecting to others, which is kind of that card. If you think about it, the card we were just looking at is that same story. So we have that 9 appearing twice on this day, and we have a third 9 because the universal number of this day is also a 9. It's 27 as well, because we have no, it's an 8. Sorry, excuse me. It's an 8. I think I'll have to work that out. I don't know. Suddenly I'm like, I'm not sure of myself. That's so interesting. It's the Mercury of the moon here the Mercury with the sun. It can actually kind of blind you to what the truth is. So you can get confused about what the truth is. And here I am. I'm the living example of I'm confused.
I'm always confused at the moment. Neptune's squaring everything in my chart still. So there is one other 27
yes,
as well.
Yes,
Sedno, who we're going to talk about a little bit as well.
That's right.
And,
right. Yeah. Yes, so that's very interesting that there's Sedna, who's also very water-based, bringing that energy into to where the sun is. So we have a lot of nines kind of filling in. So it's telling us that there is a lot of ending. Ceres is at a 9 as well on the chart. So, and that's opposite the kind of almost, you could say opposite. So there's a lot of this kind of, you can see the kind of female energies coming in, declaring it's a kind of war, but it's not a war in the way we think about war. It's more about, I'm going to do what I'm going to do. It's kind of what water does. It just says, I don't care what's in my way. I'll just, go over it. I'll go under it. I'll go around it. But you're not going to stop me. I'm just going to flow through that energy, like we were talking about, Lou, the flooding kind of energy. Is, I'm just going to do whatever. I'm just going to cover whatever I need to cover. I'm just going to uncover what I need to cover. No one's going to stop me. And that's kind of how I see this energy of the females in this chart. Is they're going, okay, I've tried to, compromise. I've tried to talk to you. I've tried to connect to you. I've tried to explain it to you. I've tried to show you. And well, now I'm just going to do what I'm going to do. Because
you're not getting it.
Exactly.
From an astrological perspective, I looked at this chart and immediately, I have to say, as soon as there's a full moon in Scorpio, my mind goes floods, because I've had personal experience of floods right under a Scorpio full moon. Our basement in our last house actually flooded in this freak flood thing. Completely flooded, and all the work we'd had done in the basement had to be redone. And I see it over and over since I've become more aware of the moon's energies, the different full moon energies. And because Scorpio, as I mentioned already when we looked at the card, is a water sign, but the deepest of water signs. I always think of Scorpio energy as kind of the water at the deepest part of the ocean. Is it the Marianas Trench? It's very dark, very, very still, but moving very slowly, because water's always moving, and it definitely represents the divine feminine. So here we have the moon, which is a female object as well, in the sign of Scorpio, and opposing the sun, which is really the divine masculine in modern day, at least. In other cultures, they've had it the other way around. But the sun is also in a feminine sign, the Taurus, which really, to my mind, is the most earthly of signs. It's because it's represents the manifest world. And then we have Sedna, almost exactly conjunct the sun in Taurus. And to quickly talk about Sedna, because I've actually just done a course on some of these new dwarf planets. Okay, the myth quickly. Sedna was a beautiful maiden who kept rejecting marriage proposals, and unbeknownst to her, an unknown hunter appeared, and Sedna's father agreed to give her to him as wife in return for fish. She's an Alaskan goddess, by the way, an Inuit goddess. And Sedna's father gave Sedna a sleeping potion and gave her to the hunter, who took her to a large nest on a cliff, revealing his true form, a great bird spirit. She wakes surrounded by birds. Her father then leaves in his kayak to rescue her from the floating ice island where she's imprisoned, while the bird creature is away. But the creature calls to the spirit of the sea to help him. Basically, the sea spirit launches waves all over to try and kill the father and the daughter. But the father decides to save himself and throws Sedna overboard in the hope that this will appease the angry god. Sedna clings to the kayak, but her father grabs a little axe and chops 3 fingers off before striking her on the head. And the 3 fingers each become a different species of seal. The stroke to her head sends Sedna to the ocean floor, where she resides, commanding the animals of the sea. And she's actually the outermost known dwarf planet currently. We know there's a lot more, but she's she's the one with the slowest orbital speed, because she's the furthest out there. She's actually her orbit, I cannot remember what it is. It's long. She moves
238. Yeah, 238 years or something like that.
Yeah. And she represents spiritual destiny through transcendent crisis, according to Alan Clay, who's written this massive book just on Sedna. So that's a long way for me to get round to saying the importance of this full moon, really. You know, not only is it in the deepest of water signs and with the sun in an earth sign, it's also got Sedna that represents this real spiritual destiny through transcendent crisis kind of energy right there on this full moon. I kind of feel it building myself already personally. I feel like we're building to something. I kind of feel like something's kind of literally going to flood. I think there could be physical floods. Sure, Houston's already having them, apparently. I have a friend there. But I think there's something bigger coming, like floods in different ways. Mercury's right there as well. I think there's going to be floods of information. Mercury is aspecting Pluto in Capricorn, who's been excavating all the crap of the patriarchy for years now and is still doing it. It's also widely aspecting Jupiter, which is making everything even bigger and expansive as well. I really feel like we're kind of coming to a bit of a crisis, and I mean crisis in the true sense of the word, you know, not crisis with everybody running around going, ah! A crisis is a kind of a turning point where things kind of come to a head and we have to make decisions. That's what a true crisis is. So I kind of feel it's a very, very powerful full moon. And yes, all the goddess energy is really kind of coming in there, because it's very, very divine feminine energy, this full moon altogether. So.
Right, and it's very interesting. I mean, the Sedna tale, there's lots of different versions, and some of the versions are about her. They say that she was kind of spoiled in the sense that no one would meet her requirements. And so that's why her father just kind of sold off, if you will. And that energy that has been around us as females, or with all our aspects of our own feminine side, whoever we are, there's been a kind of sulkiness, you can say, or a suffering that's like being a martyr, right? There's a martyrdom about that idea that since this is the offering you give me, this is the offering, this is how I'm going to wear this offer, this is how I'm going to live my life. You've made me suffer, so I'm going to be a martyr. And I think that's a really strong part of the kind of religions that we have. I forget what they call it, these kind of man-made religions, or that are focused on male gods or something.
Abrahamic religions.
What's it?
Abrahamic religions. They tend to be like the ones that are
got a different name, but I guess that will work, right? Abrahamic. It's like this idea that here's this man that has been given the authority to rule over us because, you know, God or source is behind him and telling him, yes, you have my blessing, you do whatever you want. And then the other aspect is, yes, this helpless child, female or other males or whatever, that don't have the power, that now have to bow down and just agree to whatever this person is saying, right? Because they're like, well, I have the voice of God, so you're going to listen to me. And I think that's the crisis point, because to me, if I think about a crisis, it's a cross, right?
Yeah.
And even if we think about the religion and how, like, Christianity is, you know, is about that idea of sacrifice, of, you know, there's nothing I can do because God wants me to suffer. And I think that's this idea that we cannot call to others, like Sedna called to her father, come and rescue me. I don't know what to do. You put me in this thing, make it happen. And then, like, the father doesn't know how to deal with it. All of that sulkiness or refusal to see what is in front of us and decide, like, this is what is, and I can choose to be this kind of victim, or choose to kind of, you know, live my life as a martyr. Or I can go, okay, I want something different. What do I need to do? This is what I have. I'm living in a bird's nest. How can I make this better? Right? How can I make it softer? You know, what can I do to be at peace with myself, what I value in the situation I find myself?
Interesting. Yeah. So, to my mind, I see it kind of as the tale as old as time, of the males kind of writing the female as like difficult and
no, absolutely. And there's all those aspects, right? I'm not denying, right? There are all those aspects, but the truth is those aspects cannot be true unless we accept those as truths. So right, by saying, it's not saying that we just all went around and we were helpless. We did do things, and we have tried, and men have done that thing. The patriarchy has done that breaking down, which is that, like we talked about, the Argol, you know, it's right on this, the sun is right in Argol, which is considered the demon, what is it? Something
head of the Medusa.
Head of the Medusa, which was about cutting off the power of the female, right? She was the destroyer. So I'm not saying that didn't happen, but it's happened under or within this framework of women are bad. Women have to be servants. So then we said, well, we are servants, we are bad. How do we, you know, how do we apologize for ourselves and live in that framework? And to me, that's what this flood is about. It's the flood of all this shit rising and going, I'm breaking apart this whole story, right? I'm breaking it all apart. You're not going to be able to cling to this story anymore.
Because what does water do? It erodes, doesn't it?
Right. It erodes, it destroys, it softens, it changes, it just breaks down everything. You know, water doesn't say, well, oh, you've been a good person, you've been a bad person. It just goes like, you know, this is it, right? It's kind of like, this is this flood. And I know we've talked about it before, the sewage flood. And I think that's kind of when you think about what you were talking about in the Pluto, in the depths of the water, you got all this like hardened sewage in a way. It's all the secrets, the things that we haven't, the things we're ashamed of about ourselves because we think people won't accept us. It's all like hardened underwater. And now with all this like flooding coming, it's all going to, you know, break up and rise to the top.
And that proximity to Mercury is where the information's going to come flooding in and out.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. And it's very interesting. It's at 24 degrees, right? Because 24 is this, it's kind of an abundant number. It is a very balanced, beautiful number. That's fascinating. And of course, you mentioned Jupiter, which is about expanding. And Jupiter's at 22 degrees, which is that Buddha number, right? It's that number of creating peace. And we were talking about how this moon, one of the names is, it's the Buddha moon.
Yeah, that's how interesting. And 22 is the point where Saturn and Pluto will meet next January the 12th, by which all the astrologers are talking about all the time. So, and it's showing up, you know, all these numbers around 22, 23, 24, they keep showing up over and over this year. So yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's like the maturation of this number. It's the maturation of our recognition. Like, it's like we've gone through this phase, we've tried it all as women, as people under some kind of suppression of, like I was saying, reasoning kind of thing. And it's like, that's that maturation where you get so like, you just get over it, right? It's like you've done all that. You've been mad, you've been furious, you've been manipulative, you've done all those things. And you're just like, it just doesn't matter anymore what you think of me, because I cannot live under this, I cannot live under this kind of layer of water. I can't live like just bobbing my head.
But ironically, she decides to live in the water, and she becomes like the goddess of the oceans, and actually controls it, and controls the harvest. So,
right,
yeah, I do want to mention a few.
So how fascinating!
I'd love to mention a few words that Alan Clay has talked about the astrological nature of Sedna. He talks about the 3 levels of consciousness, which is talked about a lot in evolutionary astrology.
Right.
You kind of have the unconscious level, and then this on the spiritual path, and then the spiritually evolved level. And and there's no right or wrong, and I don't think anybody's ever at one level. I think we can slip between the levels, because sometimes we react at that old unconscious level, sometimes we're back on the spiritual path, then we have glimpses of being kind of spiritually
Buddhist.
and then we slip back again. So there's no judgment here, there's no saying that you're in this box and you're in this box, but this is how you might experience this crisis, in my opinion. So, some people will be feeling some alienation, some sense of victimization, some real nurturing resentment, because this is quite a pressured full moon with these energies and these aspects to it. On the spiritual path, though, you'll feel it and that doesn't suggest that it's any easier, but it's coming to a point of radical acceptance and a radical kind of acknowledgement of how things are, and using that as a starting point, and keeping your heart open as well, and also nurturing your sense of humor. It makes me laugh because I keep pulling the devil card in the tarot, which is about kind of well, it's the Capricorn card, and it's about laughing at what's bedeviling you, instead of letting it drag you down. It doesn't mean spiritual override, it just means facing it with a bit of humor. And then at the spiritually evolved level, and there'll be quite a few of you get glimpses of this as well, a real kind of sense of transcendent peace, and of really that you're stepping into your spiritual destiny, and moving into this real transpersonal consciousness where we just know everything's connected. And how lucky are we if we are reaching that point? But of course, you can help yourself to get there by awareness and by doing the work, and kind of having practice, a meditation practice or some kind of practice that keeps you in tune with the energies, and really kind of following your spiritual path. You can actually kind of reach a bit more of this transcendence at these pressured points, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And, it's very interesting as you're talking, it's kind of like the little wheels spin in my head is what you're saying, because of course, having these 9s, right? The 27 that the Sun and Sedna are at, plus being on a 9-day, the 18, is about compassion. It's about connecting to this universal forgiveness and universal love, and really tapping into that field and the recognition, like water, everything in water. I mean, all the molecules in water, you can take out a cup of water or one globule of water that has its own energy, but when you put it back in the water, it all becomes, it's still itself, but into the naked eye, it all looks the same, right? It's this recognition of whatever is. And so that's absolutely true. We're being shown that we have a choice. It doesn't mean we're going to take the choice that would be considered the highest level or the lowest level, because this is free will. We all get to decide what we want to do. The bigger picture here is, as you've talked about, is since this is, the Taurian energy that's still going through, we're in the month of Taurus, we're in the year of 12, which is that 1, 2, 3 movement, step by step. This month is an 8 month. That's 17. It's an 8. It's about having a leadership kind of focus and going, what's the big picture? And then what are my obstacles and what do I need to do? It's another step-by-step kind of process. It's like what you're talking about. We can only come from the place we're at. Yeah. So if we're in a place of struggle, we can decide, I can change one tiny thing. I can't change everything in my life, but maybe I can change one tiny thing. I can make sure I get out into nature more. We definitely need to remember we're in this pivot point right now between technology taking over and us living our lives through technology and going, wait, I need a balance. I need to remember I'm on the earth. This is about materialism, like you talked about. We are materializing new things. So we have to let go of the old. We have to shape some of this stuff, but also materialize, get out into nature and start thinking about what we can create from what we have.
Yeah. And it's also, it always brings me back when we talk along these lines to my favorite quote, if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. Now, that can be used for real spiritual override and things if you're not careful. But it's just talking about a little tiny switch in your thinking. Instead of going, when your bills arrive in the mail, if you're having a really hard time financially, instead of going, oh my God, it's the bills, kind of just try and open it and thank the electricity bill for the heat you get. One little switch. You've still got to pay for it. Yes, it's still not easy, but at least you're acknowledging what you're getting for it, So there's lots of ways you can shift, even if you can't shift much about your actual situation, you can shift your mindset a little bit just to make things easier on you. So, yeah.
Right, you can shift your approach. This is the thing is you're free to make a different approach, like saying, I need to get out more. I just was listening to a program where the studies where they prove that people that get out into nature, when you get out into nature, it actually changes. You can lift depression if you're out of nature, in nature for a while. So just getting connected more with nature, remembering that everything in nature is alive and allowing that to speak to you can change your whole day. 5 minutes or 30 minutes outside can actually change your mood and your approach to what's in front of you.
Yeah, you don't have to go and hike the mountains or whatever. Just go outside and find a patch of grass and put your bare feet on it for a few minutes.
Right.
And just look at it. Look at the blades of grass or whatever. It doesn't.
Right.
Don't make everything too hard.
It's a choice. You can say this is easy. We actually have control over our minds. The minds don't control us. We control our minds, but we behave as if our minds are in control. And that was kind of what I was talking about in the beginning, the idea of the ego or the personality. There's all these things we do, like, oh, I want people, like I have this burning need for people to like me. I think that's a very, it's quite a popular thing, right? Like a lot of people want to be liked. And I often find myself doing things or judging myself or doubting myself because I'm afraid that what I think somebody's saying or thinking, which probably has nothing to do with me, because the facial expression or the words, my interpretation can be, oh, they don't like me, so what can I do to make them like me or something, or let me move myself away. And that's all kind of negative stuff that is not helpful. So, it's just like, oh, I can see myself doing this. And then I can say, why don't I just open my heart? Or why don't I just try something different? Or imagine that they do like me, or that it doesn't matter if they like me. All of these things we can do to go, I think lots of people like me. I can tell myself that, and I can keep telling myself that until it becomes true.
Yeah. So a couple of other things I noticed in the chart thing as well is that, I mentioned Pluto, excavating the patriarchy, but also, about the rules that we've allowed to or we've given our power away to. We've allowed to have control over us. You know, we can only, people and things, institutions can only control us if they allow it. So it's going to bring up stuff around that again. You know, Pluto's very slow moving. He's been in Capricorn for a long time and he's there for a long time yet. So he's still bringing up our own empowerment around the rules. What do we want to, what rules do we want to follow, and what rules don't work for us, kind of thing, to put it most basically. And Pluto rules Scorpio, that's where the moon is. So I just want to finish this thought, if that's all right. And then
you mean,
and then
moon, right, sorry, confused. Okay, sorry.
And then Venus rules Taurus, where the Sun and Sedna are. And Venus is on the full moon chart is almost exactly conjunct Uranus in Taurus at the beginning of Taurus, and so we've got Pluto aspected, and we've also got Venus that rules Taurus right next to Uranus, and that's kind of the lord of lightning bolts and sudden breakthroughs and things. And I think, you know, with this pressure build-up, as we've talked around, you know, to this crisis point, full moon is a release point anyway. It's a fulfillment, but there's so much more in this chart that kind of gives me the feeling that around May the 18th, there's a lot of people who are kind of going to go head explode and have sudden awakenings, sudden awarenesses, sudden release of a real flooding away of old beliefs, old patterns, all kinds of stuff, you know. And I'm not suggesting it's going to be easy. I don't think any of this is just going to be floaty. There's nothing floaty about this. It's kind of quite pressured, but it's going to be tremendous if you can kind of tap into the strengths of the deep emotion of Scorpio and the groundedness of Taurus, and really kind of face it with a bit of courage, is how I feel.
Right. Yes, and it's very interesting. I love what you shared, because, you know, of course, it's very interesting. This month is the month that is this 8, which does imbue us with courage and strength to overcome obstacles. And the 9, it's all like what you're saying, the 8 and 9, this energy of the 2 working together, hand in hand, like, I know what I need to do. I can see the bigger picture. I can let go of the stuff. But what was coming to my mind was this idea of the depth of Pluto. Really that energy coming forward and influencing the sun, or shining a light on this darkness, and that aspect of the Gorgon's head, you know, the tail of Argyle, where the, you know, the cutting off of the Gorgon's head, is this kind of releasing of this emotion, this sense of, you know, all the pressure, like you were talking about, that I've been in my head or in my heart about my situation or about things we're in, is released. So it can get, you know, messy, because now you got all this stuff all over and you've got to clean it up. But the pressure of releasing that energy, and this idea of the demon or the devil, the kind of all these the deep, you know, that kind of energy that is very material in a way. It's like, because we think of it as something real, and so it becomes real. But it's also the way we can use that to change. We can take that energy and kind of use it to shape new things, instead of just spewing hatred or anger at other people. We can actually use it to kind of fuel where we're going.
Yeah.
What's very fun, I actually agree with you, and I think it's really a fun thing that I use all the time, is this idea of using humor to shift our fear of the devil or the demon or the stuff, kind of laugh at this idea, not with acrimony, but with pure joy. Like, oh, you're trying to control me and I'm not going to let you, you know? It's that freedom of like, oh, I can actually enjoy this experience I'm having. I can have a good time. And I think that's pretty potent. And just looking at what we were looking at as the I can see there's a lot of fours in here, which I find interesting. That is also about manifesting or making things real. It's very earthy.
It is.
That's kind of waking us up. I see quite a few of the, we talked about Jupiter, and then who else is Lilith? I think she's at 13. Venus is at 4. Right, we've got all this like Chiron, right, the healer. So it's all this 4 energy that's kind of like, yes, we're creating new foundations. Then we have the 3 energy that's breaking up all of this, the curiosity, our humor, that's kind of waking us up to, oh, we have a different way we can do this or see this.
So
and then,
sorry, I'm finished.
No, I was just going to talk about Mars, but go ahead.
No, you talk about Mars first, because that will lead me nicely back to our goal, this fixed star.
Okay, good. And then Mars, which, this is really fascinating. Okay, Mars is at 1 degree
out
Cancer.
Of bounds.
What?
He's out of bounds.
Out of bounds, exactly. He's out of bounds, which, as Lou has shared, it means that he does crazy things. So he's agitating us in new ways, in expanded ways, in maybe, putting that irritation, so we're going to do something or say something that we wouldn't have said before because we had it under a lid, right? And being in this 1 degree, so very focused, right, in one way. Like, yes, I have my intention. I'm really going to niggle you and kind of make communication difficult, because I'm going to kind of spur you with fire. In Cancer, which is ruled by the moon. So it's very much the people, the home, this energy of kind of protecting ourselves, right, through our fury. But it's also the female energy, right? It's this using this male energy to bring this kind of out of bounds stuff, the stuff that's been hidden in the dark, has been silenced, into the open with a very, clear focus and kind of pointed arrow, like, this is my intention. I'm going to niggle you until you kind of explode in a way. Yeah. Or you decide to do what you said, transmute, like find the next level. What level do I want to be in? The first level where I just, just spew out everything I feel. The second level where I get more aware and I kind of start paying attention. Or the third level where I kind of like look at you doing it and I don't feel triggered.
Yeah. So I just wanted to talk a little bit more about the fixed star algol. I was drawn to quickly look at the story of Medusa, because this is Medusa's head, apparently, the fixed star, and the fixed star, she gets it gets such a bad rap. It's supposed to be the most evil of stars. Conjunct the sun, which it will be on this full moon, means violent death or extreme sickness. So, I love these fixed star descriptions. They're so gory and disgusting. And actually, there could be some of it. I was reading a story about
it.
I was reading a story about bubonic plague last night. It's on the rise again, like 10 cases or something. It's not like.
Well, yes, and I'll just input here before you go further, and this is interesting, that all the signs are pointing to higher disease.
Yeah.
And right. So, but that's one of the things that kind of eliminates, it's a gory way, but it does eliminate a lot of vermin. Like, when you get rid of the things that are eating vermin, then right.
Exactly. So yeah, don't be surprised if we have another, thing coming up, on the news all the time about a certain disease. But anyway. But I wanted to go, I find there's always another little twist to these stories, really, as well. Because Medusa was the actual one of the 3 Gorgons, was actually an exception. She was a beautiful mortal. She was not an evil one. But she was... because she was the exception, she incurred the wrath of Athena, and and was actually transformed into the vicious monster with snakes for the head. She was killed by Perseus, who chopped off her head, and so it's kind of like this poisonous side of her was kind of caused by something else. It's not her true nature from who she was to start with. So, you know, I always think there's a good thing inside everything, you know. So you'll hear a lot of stuff about Algol probably, and I think there is going to be some stuff, but again, there's the good underneath. So
yes, absolutely. And I just to put on the kind of thing that comes up for me is this is one of the things that's so interesting is here was this being was filled with poison, right? In a sense, because you got to look at the bigger picture. Snakes actually represent female. So this idea of yes, she was transformed, she was punished for being who she was, and people didn't like her because she was very powerful and she wasn't falling for all of the stories. And then we have Athena, right? Who was this great, supposedly wise being who was jealous, right? So it's very interesting, right? And what jealousy does. And Scorpio and Pluto, that's all about jealousy. There's a lot of that kind of negative, you know, this kind of heavy energy. So if you think about it, absorbing into the body all the poison, right? And then the head getting cut off, which is your mind. It's like your mind getting blown, right? And I think you talked about that. Chopping off your head, the poison kind of flying out, and then you're released from having to play that role. Like, I don't want to be defined by someone else's placement of something on me, but I also want to feel the truth of my power, where it's not being confined so it feels like it's poisonous, right? But it's being pure. My power is being pure. And so you can think about Mars in that sense of being the warrior energy, right?
Absolutely.
Kind of focusing that. And a lot of these female energies are pretty warrior-like too.
Oh, indeed. Absolutely. And they've just been painted as the evil warrior for centuries. I did have a list of other transits we have coming up, and I can't find it. I did want to just quickly talk a little bit around the full moon, because I realise we've only focused on that. Because it's so pretty big. But we do have... on the way to that, we do have Venus sextiling Venus sextiling Mars, I think. Yes, sextiling Mars on the 14th. And then Vesta is actually going to square the moon's nodes. So we've got a lot of other Vesta, Venus, they're all female, divine feminine things. We've got a lot of divine feminine aspects coming up to the full moon, was what I wanted to say, including today, where we have Venus actually trining Jupiter, squaring Pluto, and conjunct my favorite, Eris, that revealer of artifice. And you know, we've got a lot of Mercury aspects leading up to it too. And all these planets are really kind of involved in this full moon. So I keep saying it in my blog, we keep saying it on the podcast, that the divine feminine, with all these, you know, newer objects being discovered, the dwarf planets and the asteroids being used more, it's really kind of speaking more. It's almost as if the astrology and the numerology, I think, is really starting to balance out the way we think things are going to do as we move to the new paradigm. Yeah. So
absolutely. And I think, oh, sorry.
No, go on, it's fine. Yeah. I'd lost my train of thought suddenly. I'd gone off into it.
Oh no, sorry about that. I just wanted to kind of catch up, whatever, catch on the back. My mind's going now again. But you know, it's very interesting because all of these aspects are aspects of not only waking us up, but I think what's happening, well, I'm certainly experiencing, and then I see other people are experiencing, is since we're in this time of creativity, in a time of uh, um, nothing has been created yet. Like the old is dying, the new has not quite been formed. So we having all this kind of inspiration and all this newness and change coming through, the innovation. You know, we've talked about some of it. This idea of seeing where the disease comes from, right? The disease, and having choices like, oh, I don't need to do that any again. I'm freed. I can see that stuff's rising. It's being expressed. Like there's a lot of stuff that hasn't been expressed that is now being expressed in new ways and will continue. And what's happening is it's creating these gaps of nothingness where we're going, wait, what just happened? I kind of lost my train of thought, or this bubble of truth, whatever, like the way things are normally, the patterning in our minds is kind of changing. It's just disappearing. It's just blobs of nothing. Like, wait, what just happened? And I'm seeing the same thing with people, males and females. This, what you were talking about, this idea of the divine feminine, or this energy coming in, this creative energy coming in, and kind of either it can be violent in the sense that it's just knocking us over the head, we get knocked over, we have something happen, or in a more subtle way where we're like, oh, I need to change my thinking. Like it's just like showing up, which is very interesting.
I'm experiencing it most in my clients, I must say, from more of a hit over the head awakening kind of thing at the moment. People seem to be getting that more. Almost like, I don't know.
It's very interesting
to me.
Yes, right. It's like, you know, it's like it's melting. It's like your calendar and your structure is disappearing, because in order for this new stuff to find its place and to seed and to be rooted, the old stuff does need to be reformed. Like it doesn't mean, like we talked about, you're not going to throw everything away, but it does need to be. I thought I put it on Do Not Disturb. Anyway, does need to be reformed, or you need to make space, right? To like, oh, I'm making something new. So that awareness, like what does it feel like when I make something new, means that there's space to change your mind. There's space to do it differently. You're being given tools. You know, I just noticed Neptune is at 18 as well, right? That's another 9, right? The psychic energy, but it's also about kind of freeing us from that kind of prison of old thinking. Like, oh, this was something, right? That was something that was sucking me in, or, you know.
And incidentally, Neptune is right next to Black Moon Lilith, the true, true calculation. And we've noted this before recently, Jen, in a few of our podcasts, that we keep getting these pairings of kind of a male energy, traditional male energy, and one of the newer kind of female, divine female energies. And of course, again, saying that male and female is in all of us. But here we have, you know, the sun, the male, next to Sedna. We have Neptune, the god of the seas, if you like, next to Lilith, and then we have Pluto next to Saturn, two heavy hitter kind of very divine male energies, but they are at the dragon's tail end of the releasing end of the moon's nodes, saying this has got to stop kind of thing, this control patriarchy kind of thing. So, but here we have, and Venus and Uranus together. That was
right.
Yeah. Right. We just keep seeing these pairings all the time. It's almost like the divine female energies are saying, okay, I'm taking my place, I'm taking my place, I'm taking my place, over and over and over again.
That's right, exactly. Oh yes, that's a very powerful point to make. And I think what's interesting about the Pluto and Saturn pairing, especially with the node there, the south node, which is the drain, and that's also, the nodes are at 18 degrees too, so that's really pretty
Another 9.
is the fact that Saturn is really about shaping new systems. And it's like, this is the discipline you need to go like, okay, I'm done, but what does it look like to be undone and then to start over, right?
Because
And with that combination.
So yeah, he builds.
Right. It's pretty potent stuff when we're thinking about how all of these doors are opening to give us this room to kind of go, right, I don't like what it's being, but it's also asking us to pick up the reins and go, what do I want different? Like, we just can't sit around going, I don't know what I want. I don't know what the world's supposed to be. Oh, it's all a disaster. It's just like, what are you going to do? What are you choosing to do as your divine mission, as your kind of gift or your service to the world?
Exactly. Okay.
And to environment, right? What's your service to?
Well, yeah, not forgetting, of course, that, you know, a full moon in Scorpio is the deep oceans and the earth, Taurus. So, yeah. Well, how are we serving the greater anyway? So, what should we do next, Jen? We do have a fabulous question. Shall we read the symbols after the question? Shall we look at this question first?
Yeah, let's do that. Let's do the question.
All right, then. So this is from a Jennifer. I'm not going to read her surname. She emailed us and she said, first of all, I'm going to read the compliment. She said, I love the podcast. It's become a regular tool in my spiritual journey and a resource for understanding how the planets are impacting the world around us. The unabashedly feminist perspectives make my heart sing. Woo! Thank you, Jennifer. Anyway, her question.
Thank you.
Her question is, I've always loved astrology and resonated strongly with most of my inner planet signs, but I'm really trying to understand the whole chart and just learned what lunar nodes mean. She's Leo North node, Aquarius South node, and she says it's mind-blowing. She says, I understand the theme of my purpose, but the how feels like a mystery. How do I use this information? How do you advise people take action from the meanings in their chart? I share the same worries as the listener who was worried about missing signs for growth. Also, her ascendant-descendant matches her lunar node pair. Is that always the case? Do you mind if I answer first?
No, go ahead.
Okay.
I want you to answer first.
Okay. So I'll answer the last bit first because that's easy. No, the ascendant-descendant does not always match the lunar node pair at all. My north node's in Libra, south in Aries, and I'm Sagittarius ascendant. So no, not at all. So that's, we can just say it will show up at whatever house it shows up in your chart, according to your time of birth and everything. But as to the how of the nodes, well, first of all, anybody that wants to, and this is one of my Bibles, anybody that really wants to understand the nodes should get this book. And I just always have it on my desk. It's The Astrology for the Soul by Jan Spiller, who actually passed away. But this is all about the moon's nodes. But let me talk about the moon's nodes. It's the dragon's head and the dragon's tail. So the south node is the tail. The north node is the dragon's head. And your soul's purpose in this lifetime is to develop traits of the north node without cutting off the dragon's tail, if you like, without making the south node traits wrong. But the south node is what Stephen Forrest calls your soul habit. Okay, it's your karma, if you like. It's lessons your soul comes into this lifetime, or habits you're born with, so instinctive. That story my teacher told me was, imagine a concert violinist, okay, trained all these years, maestro at the violin, gets knocked out, loses all his memory, and forgets he ever could ever play the violin. But then suddenly one day he walks across and just picks up a violin and can still play it. That's your South Node habit. It's things you do so instinctively and unconsciously. It doesn't mean they're wrong, but they can sometimes have a bit of a grip on you, an unconscious grip, a reactive grip, your South Node traits. Okay, for example, my South Node is in Aries in the 3rd house, and I do have a tendency to unconsciously rip people at the knees verbally. And I know I do because I'm aware of my South Node habit. And sometimes it still slips out, you know. But I remember when I was young, because these habits are very unconscious when you're young. When I was young, people would say to me, "Do you have to do that?" And I'm like, "What?" You're not really aware. You're young until you're older. So the habit, for using myself as the example again, my North Node traits to learn, my Dharma, are things like to be more balanced, to pause, to listen to the other person before I rip them at the knees verbally. And because it's Libra, so it's about the other and being in partnership with people and working collaboratively with people instead of just instinctively kind of diving in. But, you know, to go back to this book, and I could go on forever, but if you've seen the size of book she's written about the nodes, it's not, you can tell it's not the quickest question to answer for everybody. She does at each chapter create an give you attributes to develop and tendencies to leave behind. And that's how she describes it. And that's a good way to look at the nodes. It's not saying, you know, I'm never going to speak forcefully, because I will, because I'm an activist, but it's not ripping people's heads off, basically. So does that explain it, do you think, Jen?
Yeah, I think it's a fair explanation of how it works.
Yeah.
That's the South Node, right? The control of the South Node.
Yeah. It's just about loosening the grip of those South Node habits, really, not saying, oh, they're awful and I don't want to do that anymore.
Right, exactly. And for me, the thing about the South Node is, like, this is also about our past lives. So it's a rich treasure trove, but we tend to value what we already know.
Yeah.
And so, yes, I know how to behave in a certain way. I know how to respond. So it's not whether it's good or bad. It's just like we've done that and we are done with that in some way. So it's the evolution. We are choosing the evolutionary path. We're going from who I was, which doesn't mean I don't still have that, because I do. But now I'm going to the direction I'm going towards. What is the thing I want more of? So if you ask yourself that question and you go, what is the thing I want more of? And then you look at the placement of your North Node, then it helps you understand that, oh, this is what I want more of. This is what my soul is longing for in this experience. How do I have this experience? Because if you just repeat what you've already done, that's great, it's comfortable, but it's not going to move you to the next place. So you actually have to break that romance that you have with your South Node. It's a drain in some ways. You know, it because we're doing something that's familiar and we already know how to do it, it's all subconscious. It's like we're not excited about it, but it's impacting us, sometimes not well. So by being excited by the day, like, oh, I'm moving in a different direction. I'm moving away from the tail. I'm going to the head. You know, I'm the one that is in charge of this experience. And I think, to me, that's the most powerful way to deal with it, is to decide, what do I want? Where is my head? Where's my eyes? What am I looking at? Where's my heart? What is the thing that is valuable to me to know in this lifetime, or learn or experience? And let me do that. Let me fall down. Let me make a fool of myself. so I can actually experience this. You know, I think this is, to me, the most exciting thing about being on this path, or this evolution or revolution, or whatever you want to call it. You know, we're going around, we're experiencing something, and we get to point the direction that our eyes are going. We get to point the direction or the expansion of our hearts. We can be in fear, or we can be in love. We can be looking backwards, or we can be looking forwards, and be in this moment. This is the biggest thing, is where I am now. Where am I now? That doesn't make sense. Where am I now, right? And what direction am I going towards? In this moment, this habit, this thing, do I want to do this, or I want to do something else?
And that kind of, I'm not quite sure I answered the how. How do I use this information? Well, Jen's just kind of answered. It starts with awareness for a start. And you will not really feel the pull of your North Node until at least after your first Saturn return, usually. It's just not really strongly. But how you do it is through this spiritual path and awareness, you know, and from being in the now, as Jen said, starting, where am I now? What's coming up? Which path do I choose to turn to? It's all about awareness, always. And that's, you know, why I love to bring awareness, self-awareness through my work. That's the only way to use it. And then you make a choice at every moment, every second, every millisecond even. Once you're aware, you can choose which way to go, the instinctive, old, comfortable, reactive way, or do things a little bit differently until it becomes more of a habit and more of a habit and more of a habit.
Right. You're inching towards the other direction.
Yeah.
And just one thought that came when Lou was talking is, you know, just take a breath before you react and go, do I want to choose this response?
Yeah. So I hope we answered your question, Jennifer. Thank you so much for sending it in. And
yes,
we get more questions. We love having good, meaty questions like that. That was a fabulous one.
It was indeed. Yeah, it's very exciting.
So, Jen, do you want to read the Sabian symbol for this full moon?
Let me just get my notes here. So, Scorpio 28, the king of the fairies approaching their domain. Woo! Although I think it would be better if it was the queen of the fairies.
Yes, approaching her.
The most powerful. I just want to mention this because it's so interesting. It's come up. And it's one thing that we don't acknowledge talking about the feminine is in the tarot and in all these different things. Basically, it's the female or the female side of us that connects to the divine. It's the male who looks at the female looks at the divine. So we got to remember that's the connection to the divine is through the female, right? Not through the male, and not through our need to be right, but through our idea of our intuition, our connection. So this to me speaks of this. And this symbol shows the ability or the need to feel at ease and in charge of your home territory or domain. You may have been searching for where you belong or where your domain is, although you may at times be off looking for this. Feeling alien and alone won't work. There's a need to feel accepted, welcomed, and loved. You may want to be a dominant leader or have a doting populace. As long as egos are in control, this can be a fabulous experience of returning home, nice and calm, spiritual place to be. Although this degree can show a world of one's own creation or imagination, which would be fabulously rewarding, it can also be rather ungrounded in reality, imaginary worlds, finding a place to fit in and feel comfortable, feeling in charge and in demand, returning home, taking command of your life, fairies, nature, spirits, elves. And the caution is an imaginary world dependence on trickery, someone acting like a hotshot, lording it over people, being impotent, feeling locked out, and homelessness. So,
I think you got that from the Linda Hill book, right?
Yes, probably.
Well, I mean, it's all good. I love her book too. But I just wanted to read the keynote from.
Oh yes, because I just realized there's no keynote.
Yeah. And I have it on the
Oh,
screen.
good, good.
It's the capacity in man to recognize and to pay homage to an integrating principle at the core of all existence. And really,
Beautiful.
I just love that because, you know, I talked about the deep oceans. That's the very core, your kind of root chakras, that's the Scorpio energy. And then Taurus is the physical body. And really the core of all existence, of your existence, is you. So
Yes, yes. And that recognition, I think I'm going to add, based on what it says, King of the Fairies approaching their domain, right, is this idea of belonging, of knowing that you belong here now on earth. You
yeah,
have a right to be here. So take your place instead of apologizing or, you know, acting to get people to like you or
or
to be
waiting to get
agreeable.
the mythical.
Right. Mythical, pretend, or whatever. Know that everything has its place and that so do you. So you have the right to you know, be that being who you are, right? And not demand that other people bow to you, any of that shit. But just be, you know,
Yeah.
the truth of who you are.
And just like the keynote in that one was about the integrating principle at the core, the Chandra symbol kind of talks about a similar thing. It says a building, the only part of it left is the cornerstone, and the cornerstone is the core, basically. Sacrificing and renouncing the full flood of all you are capable of in order to make way for the bare bones of what stark destiny insists upon, dropping everything to become attuned to collective destiny calls. Doing so often with considerable damage to yourself, a ruthless will, a fierce life direction, almost no self-compassion or sympathy. It has got to be this way if you are intent upon making yourself available to what is asked or intended, with every part of yourself out of the picture except your core, indomitable conviction that something hugely important is going on here, and all personal considerations are as nothing. This is a path that will draw you through some scary and extreme places, many deaths, and can draw you into a place of sheer one-pointed reality, into becoming as lucidly all here as can humanly be attained. So that's, again, you know, these Chandra symbols are very dense, but to my mind, that's kind of talking about spiritual deaths, really, until you reach that real core point of you, that cornerstone, and then you start building yourself up again, being flooded away. It's being washed away. So,
Right. And that is, I mean, 8 is,
yeah,
it is the house of death. And we've talked about disease and death and all of these things that could bring physical death, physical difficulty,
yeah,
as well as that idea that everything has been swept away from us except the core of who we are, right? And to be okay with that, because this is what the universe is doing. It's remaking us so that we can deal with what's coming. Like, it's not like, okay, I got to cling to my possessions, I got to cling to my standing in the world, so I can't take care of what's really happening.
And that's not to suggest that everybody's going to lose everything, but
No.
it's kind of, in some way, I think everybody's going to lose everything. It might be at a spiritual level. Some people will lose physical things, you know, but there's going to be some kind of deaths going on this planet.
Right. Our souls are being bared. And this is, I mean, we think about Uranus in Taurus. This is what this is about. This is about remembering what is the cornerstone of who you are, what's the core of your being, what do you value? And ultimately, that's the thing. All the things that we think we value that are not in integrity will disappear from our lives. And you know, and that's why we need to focus on what we value and be in integrity with everything we do.
Absolutely. Yeah. In fact, I've been, you know, hammering on about it in my blog for days about core values, core values. All my clients have been like, what are your core values? You need to know really what your core values are, because that's all that matters, really. The core.
And the interesting thing is, a lot of us, you know, we develop in our first 7 years of our life, we're absorbing what other people have done around us, and we take on what their values are, or what we think are our values. We don't even know, most of us, what our values are, because they've never been tested. We're just spouting things that other people have said, right? Oh, this is how it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be that. But what are we doing when we confronted with a situation, right?
Yeah.
Are we living those values, or we're just, because so many of us, and I can say that for myself, right? And I can say things, but am I actually doing that when, when push comes to shove? Am I behaving in what the thing I say is the way it's supposed to be?
I know. I think we can all say that. Yeah, I said on my blog today, I said, nobody's better than you. You're better than nobody. We're just all people on this path, all playing this game. Some of us study these symbols and things and stream the symbols, and some of us listen to it, but then not everybody else has got something else that's important too. So.
Right, we're all divine. So I think it just simplifies things when we recognize this is not a competition about who's better or whatever. We will have gifts. And if we can just remember that each of us is here as a divine being making choices, then it just simplifies things. But we need to put this kind of stuff into practical action. And we haven't lived in a world that has allowed that until now. So
definitely coming. One last thing, I don't know if you've seen our mutual friend in England, who you've worked with before, in Glastonbury. She's on a right rant at the moment about all the bullshit in the Course of Miracles, and it's like all this stuff is being
right. It's what is out of integrity, and this is the thing of understanding that 20 or 30 years ago it was in integrity because of the time we were in. It's not in integrity anymore because we can't rely on somebody else to tell us who we are. We're going to have to figure it out. We can ask for help. We can, reach out to guides and get readings from people like you and I. We can do all those things. We can do our best and get help, but we cannot get somebody else to replace us inside.
Exactly. Nobody can do it for you.
Right.
All right, I think we've probably gone on long enough for this time. I think this was a good one, though. I think this was a really good one because this full moon just has, well, I feel it has deep power. So
yes,
buckle up, everybody.
Right. This is a very powerful and very forceful time we're in, where it's that same thing we're talking about. We're all equal in the eyes of the divine, and we will be equally treated, but it is how we take what comes to us and what we experience that will help us deal better, right? Exactly. That's all it is. We've got to remind ourselves that we're great at coping with things, and we know what to do. And that's why we need to get out in nature and be connected to the fairies and to whatever things, because that's what gives us strength. That's what feeds us and nourishes us.
Yeah. Exactly. So Jen, how can people find you? Just a quick reminder.
Yes, they can find me at jendushen.com. That's my website. The Soul Pillow Salon is on there. My book, book is on Amazon, but the cards are there too. jendushen.com and Illuminating Journey Cards. I do have a group on Facebook. You can find me on Instagram or contact me, jen@jendushen.com.
Cool. And similarly, if you Google Louise Eddington with 1D, you'll find me everywhere. My website is louiseeddington.com. I have a free group called the Planetary Magic Cafe on Facebook. Also a Facebook page, Louise Eddington Astrologer, or you can follow my personal profile. It doesn't matter which, really. I post the astrology to both. There's my book, again, Modern Astrology. And if you've got my book, please leave me a review on Amazon. Reviews are where it's at, and I've kind of stalled on the review front. It's doing really well though. And oh yes, I've just moved my membership group from Patreon to a community that's more private and that I have more control over. So there's a link to that on my website too, if anybody wants to take a look. There's membership at all levels. So, and I blog all the time. And you can get my daily blogs on that membership or on medium.com, /Louise Eddington. So, cool. So for now, it's goodbye from Lou.
And goodbye from Jen.